"Don't touch me. You'll regret it," Mafia Boss whispered as he shielded the broken girl from danger. The steam wand on the espresso machine shrieked, a piercing sound that cut through the humid air of the Harbor Line Cafe and went straight to Lena Hart's spine. She flinched, her shoulders jerking up toward her ears before she could catch herself. It was a reflex she hated, a physical betrayer that told the world she was waiting for a blow that might never come. "I am fine," she told herself, gripping the milk pitcher until her knuckles turned white. "It is just steam. It is just noise." Lena forced a smile onto her face, though it felt brittle, like dried clay. She handed the latte to the man in the gray suit who had been tapping his watch for the last 3 minutes. He snatched it without a thank you, leaving a crumpled $5 bill on the counter. "Have a nice night," Lena murmured to his retreating back, her voice barely audible over the clatter of the cafe. It was 11 at night on a Tuesday, and the cafe was finally emptying out. The Harbor Line was located on the edge of the Evercrest dockyards, a place where the salt air mixed with the smell of diesel and old garbage. It was the kind of establishment that attracted dock workers, insomniacs, and people who did not want to be found. Lena fit into the last category perfectly. She wiped down the counter, the smell of stale coffee grounds clinging to her uniform. Her feet throbbed in her worn-out sneakers. It was the end of a double shift. 16 hours on her feet, and all she had to show for it was a jar of tips that might barely cover the electricity bill. The rent, however, was another story. The crumpled eviction notice in her back pocket felt heavy, like a stone dragging her down into the dark water of the harbor. "Hey, Lena?" Lena jumped again. Spinning around, it was just Maya, the 18-year-old college student who worked the closing shift with her. Maya looked worried, holding a tray of dirty mugs. "Sorry," Lena said, exhaling a shaky breath. "I am just tired. You are always tired," Maya said gently. "You should go home. I can mop the floors. I need the hours. Maya, you know that." Lena turned back to the register, her fingers flying over the buttons as she tallied the day's receipts. She kept her head down, her dark hair falling forward like a curtain. It was safer this way. If you did not look at people, they could not look at you. They could not see the fading yellow bruise on her upper arm, carefully concealed under long sleeves, or the way her eyes darted to the front door every time the bell chimed. She checked her phone, which lay face down on the counter. No notifications. That was good. She had blocked every number associated with Mason, every unknown caller, every friend of a friend who might be feeding him information. But silence did not mean safety. Silence just meant the storm was gathering somewhere else. In the far corner of the cafe, almost swallowed by the shadows of a flickering neon sign, sat the only customer left. He had been there for an hour, nursing a single espresso. He wore a coat that cost more than Lena made in a year, the fabric dark and expensive. He had not looked up once, his attention entirely focused on the smartphone in his hand. Lena had noticed him, of course. She noticed every man who walked in. She assessed their size, their temper, the way they held their hands. This one was dangerous. She could feel it radiating off him like heat from a furnace, but it was a quiet danger. Controlled and leashed, he was not like the loud drunks or the aggressive flirts. He was a predator who had no need to roar. She looked away, focusing on the cash drawer. $240. It was pitiful. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful sound that felt horribly out of place as the night air rushed in. Lena looked up, her customer service smile ready, but it froze on her lips. 2 men stepped inside. They were not customers. They wore thick hoodies pulled up tight and ski masks that covered everything but their eyes. The one in front held a crowbar. The one behind him had his hand deep in his pocket, holding something heavy. "Lock the door," the first man barked, his voice muffled by the wool. Lena's heart stopped. The world narrowed down to a tunnel of terrifying clarity. She knew this script. She knew the aggression, the posture, the violence simmering just beneath the surface. It was the language of her life for the past 2 years. "Get in the back," Lena whispered to Maya, shoving the girl toward the kitchen swing doors. "Go. Now." Maya's eyes were wide with terror, but she scrambled backward, disappearing into the kitchen. Lena stood alone behind the counter, her hands trembling violently. She tried to clasp them together to stop the shaking, but it was useless. "Open the register," the man with the crowbar demanded. Stepping forward, he swung the metal bar lazily, smashing a glass display case of pastries. Shards of glass exploded outward, skittering across the floor. Lena flinched, a small cry escaping her throat. A memory flashed, Mason throwing a beer bottle. The sound of it shattering against the wall next to her head. The smell of cheap lager and fear. "I am opening it," Lena said, her voice shaking. "Please, just take it." She fumbled with the keys, her fingers slippery with sweat. The lock stuck. It always stuck. "Hurry up, bitch!" the second man yelled. The aggression in his voice made her freeze. It was the tone, the entitlement, the promise of pain if she did not obey fast enough. She struggled with the key, panic seizing her chest, making it impossible to breathe. "Hey!" The voice was low, a deep baritone that barely rose above a whisper. Yet it carried through the room with the weight of a thunderclap. The two robbers spun around. Dante Romano stood up from his table in the corner. He did not look rushed. He did not look afraid. He looked bored. He slid his phone into his pocket and buttoned his coat, his movements fluid and precise. "Sit down, old man," the robber with the crowbar sneered, taking a step toward Dante. Dante sighed, a sound of genuine annoyance. He walked forward, not toward the door, but toward the counter, toward Lena. "You're interrupting my coffee," Dante said, "and you are scaring the girl." The robber swung the crowbar. It was a vicious, overhead arc meant to crack a skull. Lena screamed, but the blow never landed. Dante moved with a speed that blurred in the dim light. He stepped inside the swing, his left hand snapping up to catch the robber's wrist. There was a sickening crunch of bone. The robber shrieked, dropping the crowbar as Dante twisted the man's arm behind his back, forcing him to his knees with effortless power. It was not a fight. It was a dismantling. The second robber panicked. He pulled his hand from his pocket, revealing a snub-nosed revolver. He leveled it at Lena, his eyes wild. "Don't move," he screamed, his hand shaking. "I will shoot her. I swear I will do it." Lena stared down the barrel of the gun. She could see the dark hole where the bullet would come out. She could see the grease on the metal. She thought of her brother, Leo. She thought of the eviction notice. She thought, "At least I won't have to be afraid anymore." Dante did not freeze. He did not put his hands up. He looked at the gun, then at the man holding it, with eyes that were terrifyingly empty of fear. "You are holding it wrong," Dante said calmly. Before the gunman could process the words, Dante shoved the first robber, the one with the broken wrist, forward. The man stumbled, colliding with his partner. The gun went off, the shot going wild and shattering the menu board above Lena's head. Plaster and dust rained down on her hair. She dropped to the floor, covering her head, curling into a ball. There was the sound of a heavy impact, a grunt of pain, and then the thud of a body hitting the floor. Then, silence. Lena kept her eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the next shot, waiting for the pain. "You can get up now." The voice came from directly above her. She slowly lowered her hands and looked up. Dante towered over her. The two robbers were on the floor. One was unconscious, the other groaning in agony, clutching a knee that looked bent at the wrong angle. Dante stood amidst the wreckage, adjusting his cuffs. He looked immaculate, untouched by the violence he had just unleashed. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Lena scrambled to her feet, pressing her back against the counter for support. Her legs felt like water. She shook her head, unable to speak. "Good," Dante said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a wallet, dropping $300 bills onto the counter next to the shattered glass for the damages. And the coffee. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder with every second. The police were coming. Dante looked at the door, then back at Lena. His eyes were dark, almost black, and they held her gaze with an intensity that made her shiver. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "When the police walk through that door, you tell them you hid behind the counter. You tell them you never saw the faces of the men who did this. And you tell them the man who stopped them was gone before they could get a good look at him. Do you understand?" Lena nodded dumbly. "Why?" she managed to whisper. "Because you do not want to be involved in my world, Miss Hart," Dante said. "And I do not want to explain myself to the Evercrest Police Department tonight." He knew her name. How did he know her name? It was on her name tag. She realized, of course. He turned and walked out the door, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him, disappearing into the night just as the flashing blue lights swept across the cafe windows. The next hour was a blur of questions, statements, and flashing cameras. Lena did exactly as Dante had instructed. She lied. She told the officers she had ducked. She told them she did not know who the stranger was. Maya, who had stayed in the kitchen the whole time, corroborated the story, too shaken to offer anything else. By the time the police let her go, it was 1 a.m. The air outside was biting cold, a damp chill that seeped through Lena's thin cardigan. She hugged herself, trying to hold the broken pieces of her composure together. A sleek black sedan idled at the curb, its engine purring like a large cat. The rear window rolled down as she stepped onto the sidewalk. Dante sat in the back seat. The interior light cast shadows across his sharp jawline and the heavy brow that shadowed his eyes. "Get in," he said. It was not a question. Lena took a step back, her instinct to flee flaring up. "No," she said, her voice raspy. "I am walking. It is a 20-minute walk to your apartment," Dante said, "and this neighborhood is not safe, especially not tonight." "I said no," Lena snapped, the anger surprising her. It was a defensive reflex. Powerful men in expensive cars did not do favors. They collected debts. I do not get in cars with strangers. Dante looked at her for a long moment. He studied the smudge of dirt on her cheek, the way she favored her left leg, the exhaustion etched into the lines around her mouth. He saw the bruises she tried to hide with foundation, faint yellow marks on her neck that spoke of fingers pressing too hard. "Suit yourself," Dante said quietly. The window rolled up. The car pulled away, disappearing into the fog. Lena let out a breath she didn't know she was holding and started walking. The streets of Evercrest were unforgiving at night. The streetlights were sparse, casting long, skeletal shadows that seemed to reach for her. Lena walked quickly, her keys clutched between her fingers like a makeshift weapon, a trick she had learned from a self-defense video she watched after the first time Mason hit her. She heard the hum of an engine behind her. Lena stiffened. She kept walking, not changing her pace. The car was moving slowly. Too slowly. She turned a corner. The car turned with her. Panic rose in her throat, acidic and hot. She knew the sound of that engine. It wasn't the sleek hum of Dante's sedan. It was the rattle of an older engine, a loose belt squealing slightly. She sped up, her sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. Every shadow looked like a man. Every rustle of trash sounded like a footstep. She remembered the nights she had tried to leave Mason, the way he would find her, the way he would drag her back to the apartment, screaming that she belonged to him. Her apartment building loomed ahead, a crumbling brick structure with a flickering light above the entrance. It looked like a fortress to her. If she could just get inside, lock the 3 deadbolts she had installed, she would be safe. She fumbled for her keys as she reached the stoop. "Lena!" The voice came from the shadows near the dumpster. Lena gasped, dropping her keys. They clattered onto the concrete. A man stepped out. He was thick-set, wearing a leather jacket that strained across his chest. He had a scar running through his eyebrow. Lena recognized him instantly. Benny. He ran with Mason's old crew. He had been there at the parties where Mason would get drunk and break things. "What do you want?" Lena asked, backing up until her spine hit the cold brick wall. Benny smiled, showing yellowed teeth. "You saw something tonight." "Lena, at the cafe, I didn't see anything," she stammered. "I told the police." "We don't care about the police," Benny said, stepping closer. He smelled of tobacco and stale sweat. "Somebody important wants to know about the guy who messed up those 2 freelancers. Mason says you might know him." "I don't know him," Lena cried. "Leave me alone." "Benny." "Mason misses you," Benny said, his voice dropping to a mock-tender tone that made Lena's skin crawl. "He wants to have a little chat. He sent me to bring you by." He reached for her. Lena tried to dodge, but she was cornered. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on Benny's shoulder. It was a large hand, the fingers long and elegant, gripping with the force of a hydraulic press. Benny yelped, spinning around. Dante stood there. He had emerged from the darkness as if he were woven from it. He wasn't wearing his coat anymore. He was in a crisp white dress shirt, the top button undone, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle. "I believe the lady asked to be left alone," Dante said. His voice was soft, barely a murmur, but it carried a terrifying weight. Benny's eyes went wide. "You, run," Dante said. It was a simple command. Benny looked at Dante, then at Lena, and he broke. The fear on his face was absolute. He turned and sprinted down the street, his footsteps echoing until they faded into silence. Lena slid down the wall, her legs finally giving out. She sat on the cold stoop, shaking uncontrollably. Dante crouched down in front of her. He did not touch her. He stayed a respectful distance away, giving her space to breathe. "I told you it wasn't safe," he said gently. "You were following me." Lena accused, though her voice lacked heat. "My driver was following you," Dante corrected. "I was walking. I needed the air." Lena looked at him, really looked at him. He had saved her twice in one night, but she knew enough about the world to know that saviors usually came with a price tag. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I am someone who dislikes bullies," Dante said. He reached down and picked up her keys, placing them on the step beside her knee. "Why?" Lena asked. "Why did you help me?" Dante stood up, looking down at her. His expression was unreadable, his face a mask of stone, but his eyes were churning with something complicated. Tonight wasn't a random robbery. "Lena, those men were sent to test the territory. My territory." Lena's blood ran cold. "My territory. That meant only one thing. You're one of them," she whispered. "Like Mason." Dante's jaw tightened. "I am nothing like Mason." He looked away, staring down the dark street where Benny had fled. "But you were right to be afraid. People are asking questions. People connected to my enemies are suddenly very interested in the witness who saw their men get broken." He looked back at her. "And I heard you, Lena, in the cafe. When you were on the floor, you were not praying to God. You were whispering a name. Mason." Lena flinched as if he had struck her. "He is involved," Dante said grimly. "And now, so are you." Lena grabbed her keys and scrambled to her feet, jamming the key into the lock of her building door. "I am not involved," she hissed, panic making her clumsy. "I am just a barista. I am nobody." Dante did not try to stop her. He just watched her, his hands in his pockets. "Lock your door, Lena," he called out softly as she pushed the door open. "And stay away from the windows." Lena slammed the heavy door shut, leaning her forehead against the wood, gasping for air. She waited until she heard the sound of footsteps walking away, rhythmic and steady. She ran up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. Her hands shook so badly it took her 3 tries to unlock the door. Once inside, she engaged every lock. The deadbolt, the chain, the heavy metal bar she jammed under the doorknob. She stripped off her uniform, leaving it in a heap on the floor, and stepped into the shower. She turned the water on as hot as it would go, until the steam filled the tiny, mold-stained bathroom. She scrubbed her skin until it was red, trying to wash away the feeling of the gun pointed at her face, the smell of Benny's tobacco, and the terrifying, electric feeling of Dante Romano's gaze. She wrapped herself in a towel and sat on the edge of her sagging mattress. The apartment was quiet, but it felt like the walls were closing in. She remembered the sound of glass shattering. She remembered Mason's laugh when he cornered her in the kitchen of their old place. She remembered the promise she made to herself the night she finally left him, slipping out the window with nothing but the clothes on her back. Never again. She would never be powerless again. She would never let a man own her fear again. Her phone, sitting on the nightstand, lit up. It buzzed against the wood, a harsh, vibrating sound. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. She stared at it, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She did not answer. She let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then the room plunged back into silence. But the silence was different now. It was waiting. Lena pulled her knees to her chest, shivering in the damp air, knowing that tonight was just the beginning. The world she had tried so hard to escape had found her again, and this time it had brought a guardian angel with blood on his hands. The morning sun that filtered through the cracked blinds of Lena Hart's apartment did not bring warmth. It brought only the harsh reality of another day. Lena stared at the ceiling for a long time, her body heavy with a fatigue that went deeper than her bones. It was the exhaustion of the hunted. Every creak of the floorboards in the hallway outside had made her heart hammer against her ribs during the night. She had slept in fits and starts, waking up, gasping, her mind replaying the sound of the gun going off in the cafe. She forced herself to sit up. The movement made her head spin. She had to go to work. The rent was still due. The electricity bill was still unpaid. The world did not stop turning just because she had almost died. When she arrived at Harborline Cafe, the atmosphere was different. Usually, the morning shift was a quiet rhythm of grinding beans and steaming milk. Today, it buzzed with a frantic, nervous energy. The shattered display case had been boarded up with a piece of plywood that smelled of sawdust, an ugly scar on the cafe's familiar face. "Did you see him?" Maya asked the moment Lena tied her apron. Her younger coworker's eyes were wide, shining with a mixture of fear and excitement. "Everyone is talking about it. The police report said he took them down in under 10 seconds. "I was there." "Maya," Lena said, keeping her voice flat as she began wiping down the espresso machine. "I saw it when he was like a dark knight or something," Maya whispered, leaning over the counter. "A customer this morning said he must be special forces or maybe a hitman, but a good hitman, like in the movies. There is no such thing as a good hitman," Lena snapped, the words coming out sharper than she intended. She saw Maya flinch and immediately softened her tone. "He was dangerous. Maya, that is all. He hurt those men because he is good at hurting people. That is not something to admire." Maya looked chastised, but the gossip did not stop. Throughout the morning rush, Lena heard whispers from the regulars. They cast glances at the boarded-up window and then at her, their voices dropping when she came near. She felt exposed, like a nerve ending stripped of its protective sheath. Every time the door chime rang, her hands shook. She spilled hot water on her wrist twice, biting her lip to keep from crying out. By the time her shift ended in the late afternoon, Lena felt brittle. She untied her apron, her fingers fumbling with the knot, just wanting to go home, lock her door and hide. But the world had other plans. When she pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cold wind whipping her hair across her face, she stopped dead. He was there. Dante Romano stood near the curb, a few feet away from a black lamppost. He looked out of place against the grimy backdrop of the docks. He wore a long, charcoal-colored coat that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, the collar turned up against the wind. He was speaking into a cell phone, his posture relaxed but commanding. "Ensure the shipment is rerouted to the south warehouse," Dante said into the phone. His voice was low, carrying that same terrifying calm Lena remembered from the night before. "I do not care about the delay. I care about the security. If Sandoval's men are watching the port, we move the product through the overland route. Fix it." He ended the call without saying goodbye and slipped the phone into his pocket. He turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto Lena instantly. It was as if he had known the exact second she would step outside. "Miss Hart," Dante said. He did not smile. Lena tightened her grip on her bag strap. "You are waiting for me." "We need to talk," Dante said. "I have nothing to say to you," Lena said, though her voice lacked the conviction she wanted. She looked up and down the street. It was busy with dock workers getting off shift and tourists looking for seafood restaurants. She felt safer with the crowd, but only marginally. "You have plenty to say," Dante countered smoothly, "and I have questions that need answers. Not here." He gestured toward the cafe she had just left. "You just finished your shift. I assume your manager will not mind if we occupy a booth for 10 minutes. I will buy a coffee. I want to go home," Lena said. "And I want to make sure you do not get a bullet in your head before you get there," Dante said. The bluntness of his words hit her like a physical blow. Lena stared at him, searching for a lie in his face, but she found only a grim seriousness. He was not threatening her. He was stating a fact about the weather. 10 minutes, Lena whispered. Dante nodded once and held the door open for her. They sat in the furthest booth, away from the counter and the prying ears of the afternoon crew. The cafe was quieter now, the morning rush long gone. The smell of roasted coffee and cinnamon hung heavy in the air. Dante ordered a black coffee and did not touch it. He sat with his back to the wall, his eyes scanning the room every few seconds before returning to her. "Tell me about Mason," Dante said. Lena froze. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea she didn't want, seeking warmth. "How do you know that name?" "You said it last night," Dante replied. "When the gun was pointed at you, you whispered it, like a prayer or a curse." "It was a curse," Lena said, looking down at the dark liquid in her cup. "Is he the reason you flinch when someone moves too fast?" Dante asked. "Is he the reason you have 3 deadbolts on your apartment door?" Lena looked up sharply. "How do you know about my door?" "I make it my business to know the security of the people I am talking to," Dante said, his voice dropping an octave. "Tell me about him." "Lena, I need to know the connection." Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. It was hard to talk about Mason. It felt like summoning a ghost. "He was my boyfriend," she said quietly, "for 2 years. I met him when I was 22. He was charming at first. He bought me things. He made me feel safe, but then the charm wore off." She traced the rim of her mug. "He started coming home angry. He owed money. He ran errands for people, bad people. And when he was scared, he got violent. He liked to feel powerful. And the easiest way to feel powerful was to make me feel small." Dante's face remained impassive, but his jaw tightened. A small muscle ticked in his cheek. "Go on." "I left him 6 months ago," Lena continued, her voice trembling. "I had to sneak out in the middle of the night. He told me if I ever left, he would kill me. He said he had friends who would find me. "And your brother?" Dante asked. "Leo." Lena's head snapped up. "Leave Leo out of this. He's already in it," Dante said grimly. "My sources tell me Mason dragged your brother into his mess. Leo is running packages for the same crew Mason works for." Lena felt sick. She knew Leo had been struggling, asking for money she didn't have, but she hadn't known it was this deep. "Mason works for a man named Victor Sandoval," Dante said. The name hit Lena like a bucket of ice water. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You know that name," Dante observed. Lena nodded, her eyes wide. "Mason may... He used to talk on the phone late at night. He would whisper it. He was terrified of that name. He said Sandoval was the devil. He said if he messed up, Sandoval would peel his skin off." Dante leaned forward slightly. "Victor Sandoval is a rival of mine. He has been trying to move into my territory for months. He's violent, reckless, and desperate. And last night, 2 freelancers tried to rob a cafe in my district. I suspect they were sent by Sandoval to test my response time. To test me." He paused, letting the weight of the information settle. "And you, Lena, you are the ex-girlfriend of one of Sandoval's enforcers. You are the sister of one of his runners. And now, you are the only witness to a failed operation that embarrassed him." Lena felt the room begin to tilt. The noises of the cafe, the grinder, the laughter of a couple in the corner, the clinking of ceramic, seemed to warp and stretch. Her breath hitched in her chest. She couldn't get enough air. "I am just a barista," she wheezed, her hand clutching her chest. "I am not. I can't be." "You are leverage," Dante said. The world went white at the edges. Lena pushed herself back against the booth, her vision tunneling. She was going to pass out. She was going to die. Mason was going to find her. And this time, there would be no running away. "Breathe." The command cut through the panic. It wasn't shouted. It was spoken with absolute, grounding authority. Lena blinked, trying to focus. Dante had moved. He had slid around the booth so he was sitting on the same side as her, but not touching. He was close. His presence a solid wall against the spinning world. "Look at me." "Lena," Dante said softly. She forced her eyes to meet his. They were dark, endless pools of calm. "In through your nose," Dante instructed. "Count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Now out." Lena followed his voice. She sucked in a ragged breath, held it until her lungs burned, and let it out. "Again," Dante said. His voice was surprisingly gentle, stripped of the lethal edge it held before. "Just breathe. You are safe here. Nobody is going to touch you in this booth. I am right here." They sat like that for several minutes, Dante coaching her through each breath until the color returned to her cheeks and the room stopped spinning. Lena felt exhausted, drained of all adrenaline. She slumped against the padded seat, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so pathetic." "You are not pathetic," Dante said firmly. "You are terrified. There is a difference." He handed her a napkin. She took it, dabbing at her eyes. "I can't sleep," Lena admitted. Her defense is crumbling. "Every time I hear footsteps outside my door, I freeze. I think it is him. I think it is Mason coming to finish what he started. And now you are telling me it is not just Mason, it is an entire army." "It is not an army," Dante said. "It is a syndicate. But yes, the threat is real." He paused, looking at her with a contemplative expression. "I can protect you." "Lena?" Lena laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Protect me? Like Mason protected me. He told me he was keeping me safe too, safe from the world, but really, he just wanted to keep me in a cage so he could be the only one to hurt me." Dante's eyes narrowed. "I am not Mason." "They all say that," Lena said, looking away. "Powerful men always think they are the exception." Dante was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice low and rough. "I do not want to own you. Lena, I do not want to control you. I do not want to tell you what to wear or who to talk to. I simply want to ensure that you wake up tomorrow morning. And the morning after that..." He leaned in closer. "I can place a car outside your apartment. My men are professionals. They will not speak to you. They will not approach you. They will simply watch the street. If Mason or anyone else comes near your building, they will be stopped." Lena looked at him. She saw the fatigue in his eyes, the lines of stress around his mouth. He looked tired. Not the tiredness of lack of sleep, but the tiredness of a man who carried the weight of 1,000 bad decisions. "Why?" she asked again. "Why do you care?" "Because I was the one who stepped in last night," Dante said. "I made you a part of this. It is my responsibility to see you through it." He hesitated, then slowly, deliberately, he placed his hand on the table, palm up. It was an invitation, a request. Lena stared at his hand. It was large, the fingers long and square-tipped, a dangerous hand, a hand that had broken a man's wrist without trembling, but now it lay open and still. He was waiting for her. He would not touch her unless she allowed it. The realization made something tight in Lena's chest loosen. He was giving her the choice. Slowly, her heart still pounding a nervous rhythm, Lena reached out. She placed her hand in his. His skin was warm and dry. As soon as her fingers brushed his palm, his thumb moved, sweeping across her knuckles in a slow, rhythmic caress. The sensation was electric. It wasn't sexual. Not exactly. It was grounding. It was an anchor dropped in the middle of a storm. Lena felt a warmth travel up her arm, settling in her chest. For the first time in 24 hours, she felt safe. But beneath the safety, there was something else. A spark. A pull. She looked up at his face and saw his eyes darken slightly as he watched their joined hands. "I will take the car," Lena whispered. Dante nodded, his thumb still brushing her skin. "Good." The lights in the cafe flickered and dimmed as the automatic timer set the mood for the evening crowd. The shadows lengthened, wrapping around them in the booth, creating a small, private world. "Let me walk you home," Dante said. Lena nodded. She didn't want to let go of his hand. The walk to her apartment was tense. The wind had picked up, howling through the narrow streets of Evercrest. Dante walked on the street side of the sidewalk, placing his body between her and the road. He did not touch her, but his presence was so large it felt like a shield. Every car that passed made Lena tense up. Halfway to her building, a sedan slowed down near them. The window began to roll down. Lena froze. her breath catching. Dante moved instantly. He stepped in front of her, cutting off the line of sight from the car. His hand came up, hovering at the small of her back. He did not make contact, but she could feel the heat radiating from his palm through her coat. He was ready to push her to safety, ready to draw a weapon, ready to die if necessary. An elderly woman stuck her head out of the car window. "Excuse me, is this 4th Street?" Dante's posture relaxed, though his eyes remained vigilant. "No, ma'am. 4th is 2 blocks over. Thank you, dear." The car drove away. Lena let out a shaky breath. "You are jumpy," Dante murmured, stepping back to give her space again. "I have reason to be," she replied. They reached her apartment building in silence. The brick facade looked even more ominous in the dark, but with Dante standing beside her, the shadows seemed less deep. Lena climbed the few steps to the front door, fishing for her keys. She turned back to look at him. He stood on the sidewalk, hands in his coat pockets, watching the street. "Thank you," Lena said softly, "for walking me, and for listening." Dante looked at her. The harsh street lamp overhead cast his face in sharp relief, highlighting the hard angles of his cheekbones. "Lock the door behind you. Lena, my men will be here within the hour. You will see a gray sedan. Do not worry about them." Lena nodded. She unlocked the door and pushed it open. She should go inside. She should run up the stairs and lock her 3 deadbolts. But she hesitated. She looked at this man, this dangerous, violent criminal who had offered her the only safety she had known in years. He looked lonely, standing there in the cold, acting on an impulse she didn't understand, an impulse that bypassed her fear and her logic. Lena stepped back down 1 step. She leaned forward. She meant to kiss his cheek, a chaste, polite thank you. But as she leaned in, Dante turned his head to look at someone walking down the street. Their timing was a disaster, or a miracle. Lena's lips did not find his cheek. They brushed against the corner of his mouth. It was a feather-light contact, barely there, but the shock of it jolted through Lena like she had touched a live wire. His lips were warm, soft. She froze, her eyes wide. Dante froze too. He did not pull away. For a heartbeat, a single, suspended second, he leaned into it. The scent of him filled her nose. Expensive cologne, tobacco, and the crisp smell of winter air. It was intoxicating. Then reality crashed back in. Lena pulled back, her face flaming with heat. I am so sorry," she stammered, stepping back up to the doorway, almost tripping over her own feet. "I didn't mean... I was just..." Dante stared at her. His expression was shattered. The mask of the calm Mafia Boss had slipped, revealing a man who looked stunned, conflicted, and terrifyingly hungry. "Good night, Lena," he said, his voice rougher than gravel. "Good night," she squeaked. She practically threw herself inside the building. Slamming the door shut, she leaned against the heavy wood, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She touched her lips with her fingertips. They were tingling. Outside, on the cold sidewalk, Dante Romano stood motionless. He touched the corner of his mouth where she had kissed him. He looked at the closed door for a long time, the conflict raging in his eyes, before he finally turned and walked away into the darkness. The gray light of dawn was still struggling to break through the smog over Evercrest City when Luca parked the black sedan 2 blocks away from Lena Hart's apartment building. The engine purred in a low, almost silent idle. Luca adjusted the rearview mirror, his eyes scanning the empty street with the practiced boredom of a man who had spent half his life waiting in cars. He was not just a driver, he was Dante Romano's shadow, and for the last 24 hours, his shadow had been cast over a barista with terrified eyes. Dante had been clear. "Watch her. Do not let her see you. If anyone approaches her, break them." Inside the Romano headquarters, a converted textile factory that smelled of old brick and new money, Dante stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his office. The city looked peaceful from up here, a sprawling grid of concrete and glass, but Dante knew better. He knew exactly where the rot was spreading. Marco, his consigliere and oldest friend, sat on the leather sofa, flipping through a dossier. The silence in the room was heavy, filled with the tension of things unsaid. Victor Sandoval is getting bold, Marco said, not looking up. 2 of our shipments were delayed at the docks this morning. Customs officials who have been on our payroll for 10 years suddenly decided to do a random inspection. That is Victor's money talking. Dante turned from the window. His face was a mask of cold composure, but there was a tightness around his eyes that Marco did not miss. Let him spend his money, Dante said. He's trying to provoke a reaction. If we strike back now, we start a war in the streets. We wait. We watch. And Mason? Marco asked, finally closing the file and looking at Dante. The low-level enforcer who used to beat the girl you are currently guarding with half our security detail? Dante walked to his desk and poured a glass of water. His movements were precise, controlled. Mason is a pawn. He's useful only because he leads us to Victor. Is that all he is? Marco asked, his voice sharpening. Or is he a problem because he has a connection to the girl? Dante, look at me. You are distracted. You walked her home. You put a detail on her house. You are personally handling this. She is a civilian. Marco. She is involved because I intervened. She is a weakness, Marco countered, standing up. Victor knows you saved her. He knows you sat in that booth with her. If he grabs her, he has leverage. And judging by the fact that you haven't slept in 2 days, that leverage is gonna work. You cannot save everyone, Dante. Especially not broken things that are already halfway destroyed. Dante set the glass down. The sound of the heavy crystal hitting the mahogany desk echoed like a gunshot. She is not destroyed, Dante said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And if you suggest leaving her to Victor's wolves again, you and I are going to have a very different conversation. Marco held his gaze for a long moment, then sighed, raising his hands in surrender. I am just telling you the cost. Dante, in our world, caring about anything you cannot control is a death sentence. Lena did not feel like a leverage point. She felt like a frayed wire sparking in the wind. The walk to the Harborline Cafe felt different today. The air seemed thicker. Every time a car slowed down, her heart hammered against her ribs. She kept her head down, clutching her bag, her eyes darting to the reflections in store windows. She saw it when she turned the corner onto 4th Street. The black sedan. It was parked across from the cafe, nondescript and silent. It wasn't the same car Dante had been in, but it carried the same aura of heavy, silent threat. Lena paused at the cafe entrance, her hand hovering over the door handle. A wave of nausea rolled through her, followed immediately by a strange, warm wash of relief. It was a terrifying dichotomy. She was being watched. In any other life, this would be the beginning of a horror story. But in this life, the life where Mason was out there somewhere, angry and humiliated, the car meant she wasn't alone. She went inside, the bell chiming above her head. The shift was a blur of steam and caffeine. Lena worked on autopilot, her body going through the motions while her mind spun in circles. Between customers, she pulled her phone from her apron pocket and stared at the screen. She'd sent 3 texts to Leo. Leo, please call me. It is important. Leo, stay away from Mason, please, they are dangerous. Leo, are you okay? Just text me a dot. Anything. Nothing. Just the gray bubbles of her own desperation staring back at her. Her brother was 19. He was supposed to be in college, supposed to be worrying about exams and girls. Instead, he was running packages for men who dissolved problems in acid. The guilt was a physical weight in her stomach. She had brought Mason into their lives. She had fallen for the charm, ignored the red flags, and by the time she left, the rot had already spread to Leo. Nice car outside, Maya chirped, leaning over the counter to look through the front window. It has been there all morning. Do you think it is him? The Dark Knight? Stop calling him that, Lena murmured, wiping down the steam wand. And I don't know. She looked up. Through the glass, she saw the silhouette of the driver. When he wasn't looking at the cafe, he was watching the street, watching the approaches. It should have made her feel trapped. Instead, it made her feel precious. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in so long she barely recognized it. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Lena jumped, nearly dropping the milk pitcher. She grabbed the phone, hoping for Leo's name. It wasn't Leo. The Sky Bar, 10th Street, 7 o'clock. We need to discuss the protocols. Wear a coat, it is windy. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. Lena stood in front of her bathroom mirror at 6 o'clock. Her small apartment was cold, the radiator hissing and clanking without producing much heat. She was supposed to be getting ready for a safety briefing. That was what he had called it. Protocols. She should be wearing her thickest sweater and her running shoes, ready to run if she had to. But she wasn't. She was wearing a black dress she hadn't touched in 2 years. It was simple. Long-sleeved, falling to her knees, but it hugged her waist in a way that made her feel like a woman instead of a target. She had applied mascara. She had brushed her hair until it shone. "You are stupid," she told her reflection. "He's a criminal. He's using you to get to Mason, or to protect his territory. This isn't a date." But when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see the victim who flinched at loud noises. She saw someone who wanted to be seen. The Sky Bar was a neutral ground, a high-end rooftop lounge on top of a hotel in the financial district. It was far away from the docks, far away from the grit of her neighborhood. When the elevator doors opened, the wind hit her first, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and ozone. The city was spread out below them, a carpet of diamonds on black velvet. Dante was standing by the railing. Away from the main cluster of tables, he wore a dark suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked commanding, a monolith against the skyline. Lena walked toward him, her heels clicking softly on the deck. He turned before she reached him. His eyes swept over her, taking in the dress, the hair, the bruise on her cheek that was finally fading to a faint yellow shadow. His expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened, a flicker of heat passing through them that made Lena's breath hitch. "You came," he said. "You invited me," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Dante gestured to a small, private table near the edge. There were 2 drinks waiting, sparkling water for her, something amber for him. "Sit," he said. They sat. The wind whipped Lena's hair across her face. She tucked it behind her ear with a shaking hand. "Is this where you bring all your witnesses?" she asked, aiming for sarcasm but landing somewhere near nervous, breathless. "Only the ones who are at risk of being kidnapped by my rivals," Dante said. He took a sip of his drink. His gaze was intense, dissecting her. "We need to review the logistics," he continued, his tone shifting to business. "You have the number I gave you." Lena nodded. "Saved as pizza delivery. Good. If you see anything, if you feel anything is wrong, you call it. You do not investigate, you do not try to be brave. You call, and you lock the door." "I know," Lena said softly. "I know the drill. Dante, I lived with Mason. I know how to hide." Dante's hand tightened around his glass. "You should never have had to learn." Lena looked out at the city lights. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "I know what you told me. Territory, pride, but you sent a car to sit outside my job for 8 hours. That costs money. That takes effort. I am nobody." Dante was silent for a long time. The wind howled softly around the glass barriers of the roof. "My father was a man like Mason," Dante said suddenly. His voice was devoid of emotion, which made the words even more chilling. He was violent. He was small. He liked to make people afraid because it made him feel big. Lena turned to look at him. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the horizon. "He hurt my mother," Dante continued, "for years. I was a child. I could do nothing but watch. I promised myself, when I was 10 years old, that I would never be him. I would be powerful. Yes. I would be dangerous. Yes. But I would never use that power to break a woman." He turned his gaze to Lena. It was raw, open in a way she hadn't expected. "When I see you, Lena, I see the fear I used to see in my mother's eyes, and I hate it. I hate that it exists in my city. So, no, it is not just about territory. It is about proving to myself that I am not him." Lena felt a lump form in her throat. The honesty of it disarmed her completely. He wasn't trying to seduce her. He was confessing. "I don't know how to be normal anymore," she whispered. "I don't know how to relax. I am sitting here with you, and you have been nothing but kind. But I am waiting for the other shoe to drop. I am waiting for you to get angry. I am waiting for you to tell me what I owe you." Dante stood up. He took a step toward her, closing the distance between them. Lena flinched, her back hitting the railing. Dante stopped instantly. He left 2 feet of space between them. He held his hands up, palms open. "I will never cross the line you draw." "Lena," he said fiercely, "you have all the power here. You decide how close I get. You decide if I touch you. You decide if we leave. I will not take anything you do not give." Lena looked at him. She looked at his open hands. She looked at the rigid control in his shoulders, the way he was holding himself back to make her feel safe. She was tired of being afraid. She was tired of flinching. Slowly, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, Lena took a step forward. She reached out and placed both hands on his chest. The wool of his suit was rough under her palms. Beneath it, she could feel the solid wall of muscle, and deeper still, the steady, rhythmic thud of his heart. It was beating fast. He wasn't as calm as he looked. Dante let out a breath, a shuddering exhale that seemed to drain the tension from his frame. He didn't move. He waited. Lena looked up at him. "Can I?" she whispered. Dante nodded, his eyes burning. He slowly lifted his hand. He moved with agonizing slowness, giving her 1,000 chances to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek. His skin was warm, his touch feather-light. He cupped her face, his thumb tracing the line of her lower lip. The roughness of his skin against hers was grounding. It was real. "You are shaking," he murmured. "I am not scared," she breathed. Then he kissed her. It wasn't like the accidental brush of lips at her door. This was deliberate. He lowered his head, tilting it slightly, and pressed his lips to hers. It was soft at first, a question. Lena answered it by stepping closer, her fingers curling into the lapels of his jacket. She opened to him, and the kiss deepened, becoming a slow, burning tide. He tasted of whiskey and night air. His other hand moved to the small of her back, resting there lightly, pulling her just enough so that their bodies brushed. He was warm, so warm in the biting wind. Lena felt a sound escape her throat, a soft whimper of need that had nothing to do with fear. For the first time in years, the panic was gone. There was no room for it. There was only the sensation of his mouth on hers, the strength of his arm supporting her, the overwhelming feeling of being cherished. Dante pulled back a fraction of an inch, his forehead resting against hers. His breathing was ragged. Lena kept her eyes closed, savoring the moment, her hands clutching his shirt as if he were the only solid thing in a spinning world. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heart race. She felt his arms come around her fully now, wrapping her in a tight, secure embrace. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling deeply. It wasn't possessive. It was protective. It felt like a fortress closing its gates against the enemy. "We should go," Dante murmured into her hair. His voice was thick. Lena nodded, not wanting to move. "Just a minute." Dante stiffened. Lena felt the change in him instantly. The softness vanished, replaced by the rigid tension of a predator. He pulled back slightly, his eyes scanning the area over her shoulder. "What is it?" Lena asked, fear creeping back into her voice. Dante didn't answer. He shifted his position, placing his body between Lena and the entrance of the bar. 2 men had just stepped off the elevator. They were wearing suits that fit poorly, the fabric stretching over bulky frames. They weren't looking for a table. Their eyes were scanning the crowd, moving methodically until they landed on Lena. "Keep your head down," Dante said, his voice low and lethal. "Take my arm. We are leaving. Now." Lena didn't argue. She grabbed his arm, burying her face in his shoulder as he guided her toward the service exit. They moved fast, Dante's body acting as a shield, blocking her from view. They burst out into the cool air of the stairwell and hurried down 3 flights before exiting into the back alley. The alley was dark, smelling of damp cardboard and city grime. "Wait," Lena gasped, trying to catch her breath. Dante didn't stop. He was moving her toward where Luca would be waiting, but they weren't fast enough. The heavy metal door behind them swung open. The 2 men from the roof stepped out. "Mr. Romano," one of them called out. He had a thick, sneering voice. "Victor sends his regards." Dante stopped. He pushed Lena behind him, backing her against the brick wall. He stood comfortably, his hands loose at his sides, but the air around him crackled with violence. "Victor can deliver them himself," Dante said calmly. "If he is brave enough to leave his hole—" The men laughed. They stepped closer, blocking the exit to the street. "We just want the girl," the second man said. "Mason misses her. He wants to have a reunion." "Over my dead body," Dante said. "That can be arranged." The first man lunged. He wasn't reaching for a weapon, he was reaching for Lena. His hand outstretched to grab her arm and yank her away from Dante's protection. Dante moved. He didn't strike. He simply stepped into the space, his chest colliding with the man's outstretched arm. He invaded the man's personal space with such sudden, overwhelming aggression that the attacker stumbled back. Dante blocked the path completely, his body a wall of iron. He leaned in close to the man's face, his eyes devoid of any human light. "Don't touch me. You'll regret it." The whisper hissed through the alley. Sharper than a knife, it was a promise of unimaginable pain. The man froze. His hand hovered in the air, inches from Dante's chest. He looked into Dante's eyes and saw something that made his survival instinct scream. He saw the wolf of Evercrest, and he realized that touching this man, or the woman behind him, was a suicide mission he hadn't signed up for. The thug lowered his hand slowly. He took a step back. "Tell Victor," Dante said, his voice returning to a casual volume, "that if he sends freelancers after her again, I will send back their heads in a box." The two men exchanged a look. They were hired muscle, not martyrs. They turned and retreated back into the building, the metal door clanging shut behind them. Dante didn't relax. He turned to Lena, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "Did they touch you?" Lena shook her head, her eyes wide. No, Dante, you stop them." Dante let out a harsh breath. He grabbed her hand, interlacing their fingers tightly. "Luca is around the corner," he said. "You are coming with me. Not to your apartment, to my place. It is not a request anymore." "Lena, it is a necessity." Lena looked at the dark alley, then at the man who had just stared down 2 killers for her. She squeezed his hand back. "Okay," she whispered. "Take me with you." Dante nodded once, turning to lead her out of the darkness, his grip on her hand never loosening. He had drawn a line in the sand tonight, and now there was no going back. The war had officially begun. The silence inside the black sedan was heavier than the steel doors of a bank vault. Lena Hart sat pressed against the leather of the passenger seat, watching the city blur past the tinted windows. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white, betraying the turmoil that churned beneath her calm expression. "You cannot go back there," Dante said. He did not look at her. He was staring straight ahead, his profile sharp against the passing streetlights. His tone was not angry, nor was it pleading. It was the tone of a man stating a fundamental law of physics. Gravity pulls down. Fire burns. "You cannot go back to your apartment. I have work tomorrow," Lena said, though the argument felt weak even to her own ears. "I have clothes there. My life is there." "Dante, I can't just disappear because some thugs tried to scare me in an alley." "It was not just the alley," Dante replied quietly. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a phone. He tapped the screen once and handed it to her. Lena took it. On the screen was a grainy black and white video feed. It showed the hallway of her apartment building. She recognized the peeling paint on door 3B. Her door. The timestamp in the corner read 7:30 in the evening, while she had been standing on the rooftop bar, trying to feel beautiful in her black dress. A man in a dark hoodie was standing in front of her apartment. He had a lockpick set in his hands. When that failed, he tried to force the frame with a pry bar. Lena watched, her breath catching in her throat, as 2 other figures stepped into the frame. They were large, moving with military precision. Dante's men, they didn't speak. They simply grabbed the intruder. The video cut out before the violence started, but the implication was clear. "They tried to break in while we were having drinks," Dante said, taking the phone back. "If you had gone home tonight, Lena, you would not be sitting here arguing with me. You would be waiting for Victor Sandoval to decide what piece of you he wanted to mail to me first. Lena felt the blood drain from her face. She slumped back against the seat, the fight draining out of her. The reality of her situation, which she had been trying so hard to deny, crashed down on her. She wasn't just a witness anymore. She was a target. "Okay," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Okay." Dante signaled to Luca in the front seat, "Take us home." The drive to Dante's building took another 20 minutes. They moved away from the grimy industrial aesthetic of the docks and into the gleaming heart of the city's financial district. The car pulled into an underground garage that was brighter and cleaner than most hospitals Lena had been in. When they stepped out, Lena felt acutely aware of her worn coat and the scuffed toes of her boots. Dante guided her toward a private elevator, his hand hovering at the small of her back, a constant, silent reassurance. The elevator ride was smooth and silent. There were no buttons, only a key card that Dante scanned. "You are shaking," Dante observed. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. "I am fine. I am just... This is a lot." "I know," Dante said. He turned to face her as the numbers climbed higher. "Listen to me, Lena. You are not a prisoner here. You are a guest. If at any point you want to leave, if you feel unsafe, you tell me. I will have Luca drive you anywhere you want to go. But I am asking you to stay until I can make sure Mason and Victor are no longer a threat." Lena looked up at him, under the harsh lights of the elevator. He looked tired. The invincible armor of the Mafia Boss had cracks in it. He was worried, and he was worried about her. "I believe you," she said softly. The elevator doors slid open directly into the penthouse. Lena stepped out onto polished marble floors. The space was cavernous. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined the entire far wall, offering a panoramic view of Evercrest City that took her breath away. From here, the city didn't look dangerous. It looked like a circuit board of gold and amber light. The apartment was beautiful, but it was stark. The furniture was low and modern, upholstered in dark gray and black. There were no throw pillows, no clutter, no signs of chaotic life. It was a space designed for control. But as Lena walked further in, clutching her backpack like a shield, she began to see the cracks in the perfection. She saw a kitchen that wasn't just a showpiece. There was a bag of high-end coffee beans left open on the counter, a half-empty bottle of olive oil near the stove, and a cast-iron skillet drying on the rack. It was a kitchen that was used. In the corner of the living room, near the glass wall, sat a worn leather armchair. It was old. The brown leather cracked and faded, looking completely out of place amidst the sleek Italian furniture. Next to it was a vintage turntable and a stack of vinyl records, jazz, blues, old soul, and on the mantel above the gas fireplace, there were photos. They were small, framed in simple silver. Lena stepped closer. They were black and white pictures of a woman. She was beautiful, with dark eyes that looked exactly like Dante's, but her smile was sad. In one photo, she was holding a young boy who was looking at the camera with a solemn, serious expression. "That is my mother," Dante said. Lena jumped slightly. She hadn't heard him approach. He had taken off his jacket and tossed it over the sofa, loosening his tie. "She is beautiful," Lena said. "She was the only good thing in this world," Dante replied. He walked over and poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher, handing one to her. "Your room is down the hall, the second door on the left," he said. Changing the subject abruptly, "It has an ensuite bathroom. There are fresh towels and some clothes that might fit you. I had my assistant pick up some basics earlier today." "You were planning this," Lena said, raising an eyebrow. "I was hoping for the best," Dante corrected. "But I planned for the worst." Lena took the glass. "Thank you." "Dante, get some sleep." "Lena, you are safe here. Nobody gets up that elevator without my permission. Not even God." Safe was a relative term. Physically, Lena knew she was secure. The heavy door of the guest room locked with a satisfying click. The sheets were made of Egyptian cotton that felt like silk against her skin. The shower had water pressure that felt like a massage, but her mind was not a fortress. Lena woke up at 3 in the morning, gasping for air. The nightmare had been vivid. She was back in her old apartment. Mason was pounding on the door, the wood splintering, but when the door finally broke open, it wasn't Mason. It was Dante, and he was holding a gun, looking at her with cold indifference. She sat up, tangled in the sheets, sweat cooling on her skin. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The silence of the penthouse was deafening. It felt heavy, pressing in on her ears. She couldn't stay in bed. Lena slid out from under the covers. She was wearing one of the oversized t-shirts she had found in the dresser. It hung to her mid-thigh, soft and worn. She padded barefoot across the plush carpet and opened the bedroom door. The hallway was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the city lights filtering in from the living room. She walked softly, following the light. Dante was in the living room. He was sitting on the modern sofa, a laptop open on the coffee table in front of him. Piles of paper ledgers were spread out around him. He was wearing reading glasses, which made him look strangely scholarly, and he was rubbing his temples with his thumb and forefinger. He looked exhausted. The tension that held him upright during the day had seeped out, leaving him slumped and weary. Lena hesitated in the doorway. She felt like an intruder in his private world. "You should be asleep," Dante said without looking up. His voice was rough, tired. "I could say the same to you," Lena replied softly. Dante took off his glasses and tossed them onto the table. He turned to look at her. His gaze swept over her, taking in the oversized shirt, her bare feet, and the tangled mess of her hair. He didn't look lecherous. He looked concerned. "Nightmare?" he asked. Lena nodded. She walked into the room, hugging her arms around her chest, Mason and everything else. Dante shifted, making room on the sofa. "Sit." Lena hesitated, then walked over and curled up on the far end of the couch, tucking her legs underneath her. She kept a good 3 feet of distance between them. "Do you want to talk about it?" Dante asked. "Not the dream," Lena said. She picked at a loose thread on the hem of the shirt. I feel stupid." "Dante?" "Stupid?" Dante frowned. "Why?" "Because I let it happen," Lena whispered. Her voice cracked. "I stayed with him. For 2 years. I saw the signs. I saw how he treated waiters. I saw how he got angry when things didn't go his way. And I stayed. I let him chip away at me until there was almost nothing left. And now I am here, hiding in a penthouse, relying on another dangerous man to save me." She looked up at him, her eyes swimming with tears. "I feel broken, Dante. Like I am defective. Like I attract violence because I deserve it somehow." The silence that followed was thick. Dante closed his laptop with a snap. He pushed the ledgers aside. He turned his body fully toward her, giving her his undivided attention. "Lena, look at me." She shook her head, staring at her knees. "Lena." The command was soft but irresistible. She lifted her eyes. Dante moved closer. He didn't cross the invisible line she had drawn, but he leaned into her space, his intensity bridging the gap. "You are not broken," he said firmly, "and you are certainly not defective." He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before he rested it on the back of the sofa, inches from her shoulder. "Mason did not break you because you were weak. He targeted you because you were strong. Men like him, men like my father. They seek out light because they want to extinguish it. They want to prove that they can drag everyone down to their level." Dante's voice lowered, becoming fierce. "You walked away. Do you have any idea how much courage that takes, to pack a bag and leave when you are terrified, to start over with nothing? Most people never make it out. You did. That is not weakness, Lena, that is iron." Lena sniffed, a tear escaping and tracking down her cheek. "I don't feel like iron, I feel like glass. Glass is sharp," Dante murmured. "Glass cuts back." He reached out then, unable to stop himself. His thumb brushed away the tear on her cheek. The touch was electric. Lena leaned into it instinctively, seeking the warmth. Dante froze for a second, waiting to see if she would pull away. When she didn't, he cupped the side of her face. His hand was large, rough-skinned but gentle, cradling her jaw. "You are the bravest person I have met in a long time," he whispered. Lena looked at him. She saw the sincerity in his dark eyes. She saw a man who had seen the worst of humanity and still decided to protect her. Something inside her chest, a knot of fear and shame that had been pulled tight for years, suddenly loosened. She didn't think, she just felt. Lena leaned forward, closing the distance between them. She pressed her lips to his. It was a clumsy kiss, born of desperation and a need to be reassured that she was still alive, still capable of feeling something other than terror. Dante made a low sound in his throat. He didn't pull away. He met her, his mouth moving against hers with a controlled intensity. He tasted of coffee and mint. Lena made a whimpering sound and shifted, her knees knocking against his thigh. She wanted more. She wanted to be closer. She needed to feel the weight of him, the reality of him. Dante's hand slid from her cheek to the nape of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair. He didn't push. He anchored her, his other hand planted firmly on the couch cushion behind her, bracing himself, making sure he didn't crowd her. Lena broke the kiss to gasp for air, but she didn't pull back. She scrambled forward, moving until she was straddling his lap, her legs on either side of his hips. Dante's hands went to her waist instantly, gripping her hips to steady her. His touch was hot through the thin cotton of the t-shirt. "Lena," he warned, his voice a rough growl against her neck. "Don't stop," Lena breathed. "Please, just make me feel real." She kissed him again, harder this time. Her hands roamed over his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his dress shirt. She tugged at his collar, her fingers brushing the skin of his throat. The kiss deepened, becoming a consuming fire. The world narrowed down to the sensation of his hands on her waist, the scratch of his stubble against her chin, the heat radiating from his body. It was overwhelming, intoxicating. For the first time in years, Lena wasn't thinking about safety. She was thinking about desire. She was thinking about how good it felt to be wanted by a man who treated her like she was precious. Her hand slid down his chest and found the hem of his shirt. She slipped her cold fingers underneath, touching the warm, bare skin of his stomach. Dante's muscles seized under her touch. He broke the kiss abruptly. He pulled his head back, his forehead pressing hard against hers. His breathing was ragged, his chest heaving beneath her hands. He gripped her wrists gently but firmly, stopping her hands from moving higher. "Stop," he rasped. Lena froze. Shame washed over her, instantly cold and biting. She tried to pull back, to scramble off his lap. "I am sorry. I shouldn't have—" Dante didn't let her go. He held her there, keeping their foreheads pressed together, forcing her to stay in the moment with him. "Look at me," he commanded. Lena opened her eyes. Dante was looking at her with a mixture of desire and painful restraint. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the iris. "Is this what you want?" he asked, his voice low and serious. "Or are you just trying to erase the fear?" Lena blinked, her breath catching. "If you are doing this because you think you owe me," Dante said, his voice tightening, "or because you are scared and you want to disappear into someone else for a while, we stop. Right now. I will not be a distraction, Lena, and I will not take advantage of a panic attack." Lena searched his face. She looked for the manipulation she was used to. She looked for the selfishness. She found none. He was willing to stop. He was willing to walk away from a woman sitting on his lap because he cared more about her soul than his own satisfaction. She pulled her hands free from his grip, but instead of pulling away, she framed his face. "I am not scared of you," she whispered. "That is not what I asked." "I know," Lena said. She ran her thumb over his bottom lip. "I am not doing this to forget. Dante, I am doing this because you make me feel safe. And you make me feel alive. I want this. I want you." Dante closed his eyes for a second, a shudder running through him. When he opened them again, the restraint was still there, but the wall was gone. "Okay," he breathed. He leaned in and kissed her again. This time, it was slower. It wasn't the desperate collision of before. It was a slow, thorough exploration. His hands moved from her waist to her back, pulling her flesh against him. Lena sighed into his mouth, her body melting against his. The frantic energy dissipated, replaced by a warm, heavy contentment. They didn't go further. Dante didn't try to undress her. He simply held her, his lips moving against her jaw, her neck, her temple. He murmured things against her skin, Italian words she didn't understand, but the tone told her everything she needed to know. Tesoro. Mia bella. Lena rested her head on his shoulder, her fingers idly tracing the line of his collarbone. She felt his heartbeat slowing down, matching hers. Outside the massive windows, the city of Evercrest continued to burn with its cold, artificial light, but inside the penthouse, in the circle of Dante's arms, the darkness felt different. It didn't feel like a threat anymore. It felt like a blanket. "Stay here," Dante whispered, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "I am not going anywhere," Lena replied, closing her eyes, and for the first time in a very long time. She meant it. She wasn't running. She was arriving. The danger was still out there. Mason, Victor, the war that was coming, but for tonight, on this couch, she was untouchable. 3 days had passed since Lena Hart entered the elevator to Dante Romano's penthouse, and in that short span of time, the atmosphere of the high-rise sanctuary had shifted. The sterile, museum-like quality of the apartment was slowly being eroded by the presence of life. The scent of expensive leather and lemon polish now competed with the smell of sautéed garlic and basil. Lena stood at the kitchen island, a place that looked like it had been designed for a magazine spread rather than actual cooking, and chopped onions with a rhythmic precision. "You are going to burn that," she called out without looking up. Dante, who was standing by the stove frowning at a saucepan of tomato sauce, looked affronted. "I am watching it. You are glaring at it," Lena corrected. "Sauce does not respond to intimidation. Dante, you have to stir it." Luca, sitting at the breakfast bar with a tablet in front of him, snorted. He quickly turned it into a cough when Dante shot him a look. "We have a chef on retainer," Dante muttered, picking up a wooden spoon and giving the sauce a tentative stir. "We could have ordered anything in the city. Lobster, truffles, and it would be cold by the time it got up here," Lena said, scraping the onions into the pan. "Besides, I need to do something with my hands. If I sit on that couch for 1 more hour staring at the view, I am going to scream." She moved around him in the kitchen with a comfort that surprised them both. In the last 72 hours, a fragile routine had emerged. Lena cooked because it grounded her. Dante worked from the dining table because he refused to leave her alone. Luca floated between them, a silent sentinel who had developed a weakness for Lena's grilled cheese sandwiches. It was a strange, suspended reality. Inside the glass walls, there was warmth. There was the sound of old jazz records spinning on the turntable. Lena had discovered Dante's collection and insisted on playing them. There was the way Dante watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. A gaze that was heavy with a mixture of desire and worry. But outside, the pressure was building. Dante stepped back from the stove, letting Lena take over. He picked up his coffee mug, took a sip, and grimaced. "I do not understand why you drink this," Lena said, taking the mug from him and dumping the contents into the sink. "It tastes like burnt rubber." "It is an acquired taste," Dante defended. "It is a crime against beans," Lena countered. She moved to the espresso machine, her movements practiced and fluid. "Let me make you a real one." As the machine whirred to life, Dante leaned his hip against the counter, watching her. He looked tired. The shadows under his eyes were darker than they had been 3 days ago. He had been fielding calls at all hours, speaking in rapid-fire Italian that sounded angry and clipped. Lena handed him a fresh cup. He took a sip, and his shoulders relaxed a fraction of an inch. "Better?" she asked. "Annoyingly so?" He admitted. His phone buzzed on the counter. The moment shattered. Dante looked at the screen, his expression hardening instantly. He picked it up and walked toward the living room, signaling for Luca to follow. Lena watched them go, the warmth of the kitchen suddenly feeling very far away. She turned off the stove. The fear was always there, waiting in the corners like dust. In the living room, Marco was waiting. He had arrived 10 minutes ago, bypassing the kitchen to set up a secure line in the study area. "Report," Dante said. his voice dropping the domestic softness he used with Lena. "It is getting worse," Marco said grimly. "We spotted 2 more cars circling the block this morning. They are not even trying to hide anymore. Dante, they are checking our response times. They are counting the guards." "And the leak?" Dante asked. Marco hesitated. He looked at Luca, then back at Dante. "We traced the encrypted signal that gave away the warehouse location last week. It bounced through 3 servers, but the origin point was a burner phone registered to a shell company we own." "Which company?" Dante demanded. "The one Rocco manages," Marco said quietly. Dante felt a cold stone settle in his stomach. Rocco. He'd known Rocco for 10 years. They had come up together. Rocco had been at his mother's funeral. "Are you sure?" Dante asked. Marco nodded. "I am sure. He's been meeting with Sandoval's lieutenants. We have photos." Dante turned to the window, looking out at the city that suddenly felt like a trap. If Rocco was the leak, then the penthouse wasn't as secure as he thought. Rocco knew the security protocols. He knew the shift changes. "Lock it down," Dante said, his voice like ice. "Change the codes, double the perimeter guard, and find Rocco. Bring him to the basement. I want to look him in the eye. He's dangerous." "Dante," Marco warned, "if he knows we are on to him, he might make a move, a desperate one." "He's not the only one who can be desperate," Dante said. Lena was in the guest bedroom, folding the laundry she had insisted on doing herself, when her phone vibrated on the bedside table. She froze. It wasn't the unknown number she had learned to dread. It was a name she had been praying to see. Leo. She snatched the phone up, her heart hammering. "Leo?" There was no answer. Just the notification of a voicemail. Lena's hands shook as she dialed into her voicemail. She pressed the phone to her ear, squeezing her eyes shut. "Lena." Leo's voice sounded tinny and far away. He sounded terrified. "Lena, I messed up. I am in deep... Victor. He knows I tried to skim off the top. I didn't mean to. I just needed cash to get out of town." There was a sound of a heavy thud in the background, then a sharp intake of breath. "They have me at the old textile warehouse, in the packing district. Mason is here. He says if you don't come with the money I owe, they are going to break my legs. Please, Lena, I don't have anyone else. Don't tell your rich boyfriend, just come. Please." The message ended with a click. Lena stood paralyzed. The room spun around her. Leo was hurt. Leo was trapped, and it was her fault. If she hadn't run to Dante, if she hadn't hidden away in this ivory tower, maybe she could have protected him. She moved on autopilot. She grabbed her backpack. She shoved her wallet inside. She opened the bedroom door and ran into Dante in the hallway. He caught her by the shoulders, steadying her. "Whoa, where is the fire?" Then he saw her face. "What happened?" he demanded, his grip tightening. "I have to go," Lena said, her voice high and breathless. "I have to go out. Just for an hour." "No," Dante said immediately. "Absolutely not. You don't understand," Lena cried, trying to pull away. "It is Leo. He called me. They have him." Dante's face went rigid. "Who has him?" "Victor, Mason, they are at a warehouse. They're going to hurt him. Dante, I have to go." "Let me hear the message," Dante said, holding out his hand. "No." Lena stepped back, clutching the phone to her chest. "They said not to tell you. They said if I bring anyone, they will hurt him worse." "Lena, stop," Dante said, his voice rising. "Think. It is a trap. They are using him to draw you out." "I don't care," Lena yelled. "He is my brother. He's 19 years old. He's only in this mess because of me. He's in this mess because he made choices." Dante snapped. "And if you walk out that door, you are walking straight into a cage." "So what?" Lena shouted, the fear turning into anger. "Am I not in a cage right now? I can't leave. I can't work. I can't breathe without your permission. You act like you are saving me, but you are just another man telling me what I can and can't do." Dante flinched as if she had slapped him. He took a step back, his expression darkening. "Is that what you think this is?" he asked, his voice low and trembling with suppressed rage. "You think this is about control?" "Yes," Lena accused, tears streaming down her face. "Mason controlled me with fear. You control me with locks and guards. What is the difference? Dante, in the end, I am just a thing to be kept." Dante slammed his hand against the wall next to her head. The sound was like a gunshot. Lena gasped, shrinking back. "The difference," Dante roared, losing his composure for the first time since she had met him, "is that I am trying to keep you alive." He leaned in, his face inches from hers. His eyes were wild, filled with a terrifying mix of fury and desperation. "You think I enjoy this? You think I like watching you pace around this apartment like a trapped bird? Every time you walk near a window, my heart stops. Every time my phone rings, I think it is the police telling me they found your body in a ditch." He took a ragged breath, his voice cracking. "Every decision I make, Lena, every order I give, is weighted with the possibility of losing you. I am terrified, all the time. So do not stand there and tell me I am like Mason. Mason wanted to break you. I am trying to keep you whole." Lena stared at him, stunned into silence. She saw the raw vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that he usually kept hidden behind walls of stoicism. He wasn't controlling her because he wanted to own her. He was controlling the environment because he couldn't bear the thought of a world without her in it. But the image of Leo, beaten and alone, flashed in her mind. "I can't let him die." "Dante?" she whispered. "I will send my men," Dante said, straightening up and regaining some of his control. "Tell me where he is. I will get him. If they see your men, they will kill him." Lena lied. She knew it wasn't a lie. Mason was volatile. If he saw Luca or Marco, he would panic. "I need to go alone, just to talk, just to pay them off." "I cannot let you do that," Dante said. "I am sorry. Lena, I am forbidding it." He turned his back on her, walking toward the living room where Marco was waiting. "Luca," Dante called out. "Put a guard on the door. Miss, Hart is not to leave this apartment, under any circumstances." Lena watched him walk away. A cold resolve settled over her. He was trying to save her. She knew that, but she couldn't let him save her at the cost of her brother's life. 20 minutes later, the opportunity presented itself. Dante and Marco were deep in conversation in the study, reviewing the security footage of Rocco. Luca had stepped into the kitchen to take a call from the perimeter team. Lena didn't hesitate. She didn't take the elevator. She knew it required a key card she didn't have. She went to the service door in the laundry room. It was meant for staff and deliveries. It had a keypad. She had watched Dante punch in the code yesterday when a delivery of groceries arrived. 1984, the year his mother died. Her fingers trembled as she punched in the numbers. The light turned green. The lock clicked. Lena slipped out into the concrete stairwell. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing her fate. She ran. She ran down 40 flights of stairs, her sneakers squeaking on the concrete, her lungs burning. She didn't stop until she reached the ground floor service exit that spilled out into the alley behind the building. The cold air hit her face, sharp and biting. It smelled of exhaust and freedom. She pulled her hood up and walked quickly to the main street. She hailed a rideshare app on her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. Destination District 4, the old packing yards. When the car arrived, a beat-up sedan smelling of pine air freshener, Lena climbed in. She looked back at the towering glass spire of Dante's building. She felt a pang of guilt so sharp it almost doubled her over. "I am sorry," she thought. "Please forgive me." "Drive," she told the driver. Fast. The warehouse district was a graveyard of industry. Rusted, corrugated metal buildings lined the cracked asphalt streets. Street lights flickered, buzzing like angry insects. The car dropped her off at the corner. Lena walked the last block, clutching her backpack straps. The warehouse Leo had described was a hulking shadow against the night sky. The sliding metal door was cracked open a few inches, spilling a slice of yellow light onto the ground. Lena slipped through the gap, inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of stale beer. The space was vast, filled with rotting wooden crates and rusted machinery. "Leo?" she called out, her voice echoing in the emptiness. "Lena?" The voice came from the center of the room. Lena ran toward it. Leo was tied to a chair in the middle of a clearing cleared of debris. His face was a map of bruises. His lip was split, and one eye was swollen shut. "Oh my God," Lena gasped, dropping to her knees beside him. She reached for the ropes binding his wrists. "Leo, I am here. I am going to get you out. "Lena, stop." Leo wheezed. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking over her shoulder. "You shouldn't have come." "What?" Lena froze. Slow clap. The sound echoed from the shadows. Lena spun around, still on her knees. Mason stepped out from behind a stack of crates. He was wearing a leather jacket that creaked as he moved. He held a gun loosely in his hand, tapping it against his thigh. "You always were predictable, babe," Mason said, a smirk twisting his face. "Tell the girl her brother is hurting, and she comes running. You have a bleeding heart. It is your worst quality." "Mason," Lena said, standing up slowly. She forced her legs to stop shaking. "I am here. Let him go." Mason laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Let him go?" "I don't think so. Leo here. He's part of the family now." He gestured to the shadows. 4 more men stepped out. They were armed, and they weren't wearing masks. Leo looked down at his lap. "I am sorry. Lena," he sobbed. "They made me call. They said they would kill me if I didn't get you here." "It is okay." "Leo," Lena said, though her heart was plummeting into her stomach. Mason walked closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. He looked her up and down, his eyes lingering on her in a way that made her skin crawl. "You look good. Lena, expensive. That Italian suit buying you nice things? He's twice the man you will ever be." Lena spat. Mason's face darkened. He backhanded her. The blow was fast and hard. Lena stumbled back, tasting blood. She caught herself on a crate, refusing to fall. She looked up at him, her eyes blazing. "Is that all you have?" she challenged, her voice steady despite the pain. "You hit girls. That is your big power move. You are pathetic." Mason snarled and raised the gun, pointing it at her forehead. "Watch your mouth. Enough." The new voice was smooth, cultured, and infinitely more terrifying than Mason's posturing. A man stepped into the light. He was older, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than the entire warehouse. He walked with a cane, but he didn't lean on it. It was a prop, or a weapon. Victor Sandoval. Lena recognized him from the pictures Dante had shown her. This was the architect of the war. Victor looked at Lena with mild interest, as if she were a piece of furniture he was considering buying. "So this is the girl who started all the trouble," Victor said. "I didn't start anything," Lena said. "On the contrary." Victor smiled thinly. "You exist. That seems to be enough to make Dante Romano lose his mind." He turned to Mason. "Put the gun away, you idiot. She's not for shooting. She has currency." Victor walked a circle around Lena. "Dante has taken 3 of my shipping routes. He has seized 2 of my warehouses. He's squeezing me out. I needed a way to make him pause, to make him negotiate." He stopped in front of her. "You are the trade, my dear. I am going to call Mr. Romano, and I am going to offer him a choice. He can have his territory or he can have you." "He won't trade," Lena said, lifting her chin. "He isn't stupid. He won't give up his empire for one person." Victor's eyes gleamed. "Oh, I think he will. Because unlike me, Dante has a fatal flaw. He feels things." Victor snapped his fingers. "Tie her up. Put her next to the brother. Back at the penthouse." The silence was shattered by a roar of pure fury. Dante stood in the center of the living room. The guest room was empty. The laundry room door was unlatched. He had found her phone. She had left it on the bed, probably to stop him from tracking her, but she had forgotten something. The smartwatch he had given her yesterday, for checking your heart rate, he had teased. It had a GPS. "Marco," Dante bellowed. Marco ran in from the study. "What is it? She is gone," Dante said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. A quiet before the apocalypse. "She went to the packing district. Rocco," Marco realized instantly. Rocco must have given them the access codes to the service elevator. He cleared the path for her. Dante didn't answer. He was already moving toward the private elevator, checking the magazine of his handgun. He slid it into his holster. "Get the team," Dante said. "Gear up. Heavy armor. No stealth this time." He punched the button for the garage. "We are going to war?" Marco asked. "Running to catch up." "No," Dante said, the steel doors closing on his face, sealing in the look of a man who was about to burn the world down. "We're going to a slaughter." The warehouse was cold, but Lena was sweating. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back. She sat back to back with Leo on the dusty floor. "I am so sorry." "Lena," Leo whispered again. "Stop apologizing." Lena whispered back, "Just be ready." Ready for what? Ready to run. Mason was pacing back and forth, looking at his phone. Where is he? He should be calling by now. Victor sat on a crate, cleaning his fingernails with a small knife. Patience. Mason, fear takes time to marinate. Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows. Then the lights went out. Not just the lights in the warehouse, the street lights outside. The entire block plunged into absolute, suffocating darkness. "What the hell?" Mason yelled. Victor stood up, his calmness cracking. "Backup generator, now!" Before anyone could move, a sound cut through the darkness. It was the sound of glass shattering high above. Then, the red dots appeared. Laser sights, 3 of them, dancing across the chests of Victor's guards. "Drop the weapons!" a voice boomed from the rafters. Chaos erupted. Victor's men opened fire blindly into the darkness. Muzzle flashes lit up the room like strobe lights, revealing brief, terrifying glimpses of the battle. Lena threw herself sideways, knocking Leo to the ground. "Stay down!" she screamed. She saw movement near the main door. A shape moving through the chaos with terrifying purpose. Dante. He wasn't wearing his suit. He was wearing tactical gear, a dark vest over a black shirt. He moved like water, flowing between the bullets. He shot the man nearest to him. 2 controlled taps to the chest. He disarmed a second man, breaking his arm with a sickening crunch before kicking him into a pile of pallets. He was a hurricane of violence. But his eyes were scanning the room. He wasn't looking at the enemies. He was looking for her. "Lena!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the gunfire. "Here!" Lena screamed. "Dante!" He saw her. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a second, the violence in his face was replaced by a look of sheer, agonizing relief. He started toward her, but Mason was closer. Mason saw Dante coming. He saw the end of his life approaching in the form of the Romano Dawn. Panic overtook him. He didn't think. He just reacted. He grabbed Lena by her hair, yanking her up from the floor. He jammed the barrel of his gun against her temple. "Stop!" Mason screamed, his voice cracking. "Stop or I paint the wall with her." The shooting stopped. Silence descended on the warehouse, heavy and thick with dust and gunpowder. Dante froze. He was 20 feet away. His gun was raised, pointed directly at Mason's head, but Mason was using Lena as a shield. Her body covered his vital points. "Let her go." "Mason," Dante said. His voice was a low rumble, vibrating with restrained death. "Back off," Mason shrieked. "Drop the gun! Kick it over here!" Dante didn't move. He stared at Mason. "You are a dead man," Dante said. "The only question is how much it is going to hurt. I said drop it!" Mason pressed the gun harder against Lena's skin. She whimpered, tears leaking from her eyes. Dante's eyes flickered to Lena. He saw the terror in her face. He saw the bruise on her cheek where Mason had hit her. Slowly, agonizingly, Dante lowered his gun. He crouched down and placed it on the floor. He stood up, showing his empty hands. "Okay," Dante said softly. "I am unarmed. Let her go. Take me instead." Mason laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "Take you? Oh, I'm going to kill you, Romano. But first, I want you to watch." He cocked the hammer of the gun. Lena looked at Dante. She saw the terror in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. He was helpless. The most powerful man in the city, standing with his hands up, willing to die to save her. Something inside Lena snapped. She wasn't a victim, not anymore. She didn't freeze. She didn't beg. She slammed her heel down onto Mason's instep with all the force she possessed. Mason howled in pain. His grip on her hair loosened for a fraction of a second. Lena threw her head back, smashing her skull into his nose. There was a crunch of cartilage. Mason stumbled back, the gun waving wildly. "Get down," Dante roared. Lena dropped to the floor. Dante didn't need a second invitation. He lunged. He covered the 20 feet in a heartbeat. He didn't reach for his gun. He tackled Mason, driving him into the concrete floor with the force of a freight train. The impact knocked the breath out of Mason. The gun skittered away across the floor. Dante was on top of him instantly. His fists rained down. 1, 2, 3 brutal strikes that silenced Mason's screams. Dante stood up, breathing hard. He turned to Lena. She was scrambling to her knees, behind Dante. Victor Sandoval emerged from the shadows, a backup pistol raised. "Dante!" Lena screamed. Dante spun around. He was too late. Victor fired. Dante's body jerked. He stumbled back, clutching his shoulder, but he didn't fall. He stayed on his feet, placing himself directly between Lena and the gunman. He spread his arms, making himself a wall. "Don't touch me. You'll regret it." He whispered the words to the air, to the pain, to the men who dared to threaten what was his. Then the warehouse doors burst open as Marco and the rest of the team flooded in. But Lena wasn't watching the rescue. She was watching Dante, who was swaying on his feet, blood seeping through his fingers, looking at her with a crooked, pained smile. "I told you," he rasped, before his knees finally buckled. "I am not him." And as he fell, Lena caught him. The wind off the harbor smelled of rust and cold salt water as Dante Romano crouched in the shadow of a shipping container, 200 yards from the warehouse. His breathing was slow, deliberate, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside his chest. Beside him, Marco signaled with 2 fingers. 2 guards. West perimeter, silent. Dante nodded. He watched as his men moved into the darkness, blending with the night like smoke. They were professionals, the best in the city, but tonight Dante did not feel like a general commanding an army. He felt like a man whose heart had been ripped out of his chest and placed inside that corrugated metal box ahead of him. He checked his weapon, the cold steel grounding him. For the last 3 days, he had lived in a suspended reality, Lena's laughter in his kitchen, the smell of her shampoo on his pillows, the weight of her sleeping body pressed against his side on the sofa. Those memories flashed through his mind now, vivid and painful. They were the fuel that turned his fear into a cold, diamond-hard determination. "They will not touch her again," Dante told himself, "or I will burn this entire city to ash." A soft chirp in his earpiece signaled that the perimeter was clear. "Move in," Dante whispered. They breached the side entrance with practiced silence. The warehouse was a cavernous space, filled with shadows and the skeletons of old machinery, but in the center, bathed in the harsh yellow light of a portable work lamp, the stage was set. Victor Sandoval stood near a stack of crates, looking every bit the aging king holding onto a crumbling throne, and there, in the center of the open floor, was Lena. Seeing her sent a shockwave through Dante's system that nearly broke his discipline. She was on her knees, her hands bound behind her back with zip ties. Her hair was messy, her cheek bruised. Leo was kneeling beside her, head bowed, looking broken. Standing over them, with a hand resting possessively on Lena's shoulder, was Mason. He was smirking, a petty tyrant reveling in his moment of power. Dante stepped out of the shadows. He did not run, he did not shout, he simply walked into the light, his gun held low at his side, his presence filling the room like a sudden drop in atmospheric pressure. "Let them go." "Victor," Dante said. His voice was not loud, but it carried to the rafters. Victor turned, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Ah, the prodigal son arrives. I was wondering how long it would take you to track the phone." "Let them go," Dante repeated, stopping 20 feet away. "Take me instead. This is between you and me. It always has been." Victor laughed, a dry, rattling sound, a trade. "You think this is a business transaction, Dante? No, this is personal. You took my territory, you embarrass me. And now, I am going to break you." He gestured to Mason. Mason tightened his grip on Lena's shoulder. Lena flinched, looking up. When her eyes met Dante's, he saw terror, but he also saw something else. Trust. She believed he would save her. The weight of that belief nearly brought him to his knees. "I want you to watch." "Dante," Victor sneered, "I want you to see what happens when you reach for things that do not belong to you." Dante's grip on his gun tightened until his knuckles turned white. He calculated the angles. Mason was too close to her. If Dante fired, Mason would use her as a shield. Suddenly, the building shook. A deafening boom erupted from the east wall, a distraction charge planted by Marco's team. Dust rained down from the ceiling. "Now!" Dante roared. Chaos exploded. Dante's men opened fire from the catwalks above. Victor's guards scrambled for cover, returning fire blindly into the dark. Bullets sparked against the concrete floor and ricocheted off the metal beams. Lena threw herself flat, dragging Leo down with her behind a stack of pallets. Dante moved. He sprinted across the open ground, ignoring the bullets that kicked up dust around his boots. His eyes were locked on one thing. Mason had recovered from the shock. He saw Lena crawling away and lunged for her. He grabbed her arm, hauling her up roughly, trying to drag her into the cover of the back office. "No!" Lena screamed, digging her heels in. Dante hit them like a battering ram. He didn't use his gun. He used his body. He slammed into Mason, tearing his grip off Lena and shoving him backward. Mason stumbled, flailing, but managed to keep his footing. Dante spun around, grabbing Lena and pulling her against his chest. He turned his back to the enemy, shielding her completely with his own body. He shoved her down behind the heavy machinery, placing himself between her and the line of fire. "Stay down," he commanded. 3 of Victor's men had circled the flank. They emerged from behind a forklift, raising their assault rifles. They had a clear line of sight. Dante didn't dive for cover. He stood his ground, standing over Lena, his body a human wall. He raised his handgun, aiming at the trio. "Don't touch me. You'll regret it." He whispered the words, a lethal promise directed at the men aiming at the woman he loved. It wasn't a plea. It was a statement of fact. If they engaged him, they would pay. The lead gunman fired. Dante jerked violently as the bullet tore through his left shoulder. "Dante!" Lena screamed from the floor. He didn't fall. He staggered back a step, gritting his teeth so hard he thought they might shatter, but he didn't drop his arm. He fired back, one-handed, bang, bang, bang. 2 of the gunmen dropped. The 3rd scrambled for cover. Blood blossomed on Dante's white shirt, spreading fast. He swayed, his vision graying at the edges, but he stayed on his feet. He was the only thing standing between Lena and death. Lena looked up at him. She saw the blood. She saw the way his hand trembled as he tried to reload. She saw Mason, who had recovered his weapon, creeping around the side of the crate, raising his gun to shoot Dante in the back. Something inside Lena snapped. The fear that had ruled her life for 2 years evaporated, replaced by a cold, blinding rage. No more. She saw Mason's drop pistol lying on the concrete a few feet away. Lena lunged. She grabbed the gun. It was heavy, cold, and smelled of oil. She rolled onto her back, lifting the weapon with both hands. "Mason!" she screamed. Mason turned, surprised. Lena didn't hesitate. She didn't think about the morality of it. She didn't think about the past. She thought about Dante, bleeding on the floor for her. She pulled the trigger. The recoil jarred her arms. The shot hit Mason in the chest. He looked down, stunned, before crumpling to the floor. The man who had haunted her nightmares was gone, ended by the very hands he had tried to bind. Clear. Marco's voice rang out from the catwalks. The firing stopped. Victor was nowhere to be seen, fled into the night like the coward he was. His empire shattered, his men dead or surrendered. Dante turned slowly. He looked at Mason's body, then at Lena, who was still holding the gun, her chest heaving. He smiled, a weak, crooked thing. "You are a terrible shot," he rasped. "You aimed for the head, you hit the chest." Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. "Dante!" Lena dropped the gun and scrambled to him. She pressed her hands over the wound on his shoulder, the hot blood seeping through her fingers. "Dante, stay with me," she sobbed, her tears mixing with the dust on his face. "Please, do not die. You promised you were not him." Dante's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her, his gaze unfocused but soft. "Lena," he whispered. "I love you," she cried, leaning her forehead against his. "I love you. Dante, I chose you. I chose you the moment you walked into that alley. Just stay. Please stay." Dante let out a long, shuddering breath, his hand fumbling to find hers. He squeezed her fingers weakly. "I am not going anywhere," he murmured. "I still owe you a coffee." 6 weeks later, the private gym in the penthouse smelled of antiseptic and effort. Dante Romano gritted his teeth as he lifted his left arm, the resistance band stretching tight. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "Higher," the physical therapist said mercilessly. Dante growled but pushed through the pain. His shoulder was stiff, the scar tissue still knitting together, but the arm worked. "That is enough." A voice called from the doorway. Dante dropped his arm, relief flooding his face. He turned to see Lena leaning against the doorframe. She was holding 2 bottles of water. She looked different. The shadows under her eyes were gone. She stood straighter. She was wearing a simple sweater and jeans, but she wore them with the confidence of someone who knew she could survive the fire. "You are interrupting my torture," Dante said, taking the water she offered. "You are turning purple," Lena teased. "Marco is waiting for you in the study. He says the sale of the shipping containers went through." Dante nodded, wiping his face with a towel. "Good. We're out of the smuggling business, Lena. Legit logistics only. It is less money, but I find I sleep better." Lena smiled. Reaching up to fix his collar, Leo called. He got an A on his midterm. Dante's expression softened. The kid is smart. He just needed a chance. And a terrifying older sister to keep him in line. Lena punched his good arm lightly. "I am not terrifying. You shot a man." "Lena," Dante said, his eyes serious. "You are the most terrifying thing I have ever met, and the most beautiful." Lena blushed, looking down. "I just did what I had to do. Come here." Dante wrapped his good arm around her waist and pulled her close. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling the scent of her. It was the only thing that settled the lingering adrenaline in his blood. "Go see Marco," Lena whispered. "Then come find me on the balcony." The night air was crisp, but it didn't have the bite of winter anymore. Spring was coming to Evercrest. Lena stood at the railing of the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. It was the same view she had looked at a month ago, feeling like a prisoner. Now, it just looked like a city, a place where people lived, loved, and survived. She heard the sliding door open behind her. Dante stepped out. He had changed into a soft sweater, abandoning the suits he used to wear like armor. He moved up behind her, wrapping both arms around her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder, his body a solid, warm weight against her back. "Thinking about running?" he asked softly. Lena laughed. "No, I was thinking about where we should go next week." Dante hummed. "I was thinking the coast. Somewhere quiet. No reception, just sand and water. And no bodyguards?" Lena asked. "Luca will be nearby," Dante admitted, "but I will tell him to stay at least a mile away." Lena turned in his arms so she was facing him. She ran her hand over his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. Her fingers moved up to his shoulder, tracing the ridge of the scar through the wool of his sweater. It didn't scare her anymore. It was a map of their history, a reminder of the choice he had made. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what? For standing in front of me, for taking the bullet, for letting me save myself when I needed to." Dante cupped her face, his thumb brushing her lower lip. "You saved me. Lena, I was drowning in this city. I was becoming everything I hated. You pulled me out." He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't the desperate kiss of the warehouse, or the tentative kiss of the rooftop. It was a kiss of promise. It was deep, slow, and filled with a quiet certainty. Lena kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into the contact. She felt the danger that still lingered at the edges of their lives. Victor's remnants, the police, the competitors, but it felt distant. She pulled back slightly, looking into his dark eyes. "Don't touch me," she whispered, a playful echo of the words that had saved them. Dante smiled, a true, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. "You will regret it?" he asked. Lena shook her head, pulling him down for another kiss. "No," she murmured against his lips. "I don't think I will regret anything ever again." Above them, the stars shone bright and clear over the city, indifferent to the chaos below, watching over the 2 broken people who had found a way to make each other whole. Thank you so much for listening to the final part of Don't Touch Me. You'll regret it. It has been an incredible journey bringing Lena and Dante's story to life, from the dark corners of the Harborline Cafe to the heights of the Evercrest penthouse. I hope you enjoyed seeing them find their strength and their happily ever after. I would love to know what you thought of the ending. Did Lena's transformation surprise you? What was your favorite moment in the series? Please let me know in the comments below, and tell me where you are listening from. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We have many more passionate, intense, and emotional stories coming your way very soon. Until next time, keep believing in love, no matter how dangerous the world gets.